They told her it was just a drill, just another routine training session in the dusty combat gym outside Fort Ridgewater, tucked deep in the Colorado mountains. But when Sergeant Matthew Cross didn't let go when his forearm stayed clamped across her throat long after she'd tapped out twice, it stopped being training. It became a warning. Lieutenant Commander Scarlett Voss had served in war zones, crossed deserts under enemy fire, survived ambushes in canyons where friends never came back. But nothing in her decorated career had prepared her for this being choked unconscious by a fellow Marine in front of silent instructors. Eyes lowered. Nobody stepping in. 8.6 seconds. That's how long he held it after she signaled. Long enough for her vision to tunnel. Long enough for her to claw at his arm, legs kicking uselessly on the mat. Long enough for her to remember what it felt like to die. When she came to slumped like a rag doll in the dead center of the mat, Scarlett didn't scream, didn't yell, didn't even blink. She simply stood, her throat already purpling from the force of his grip, and looked Sergeant Cross straight in the eye. Not with fear, but with promise. She didn't forget. 3 days later, every man and woman in that compound stood frozen as the video played on the wall monitors, timestamps, footage, tap counts, cold, undeniable evidence. Cross didn't just lose a match. He lost everything. But to understand how we got to that moment, you have to go back 96 hours to a steel-walled briefing room beneath the Pentagon, where a woman with the eyes of a sniper and the scars of another war sat alone with a choice that would change everything. Before we continue, drop a comment where in the world are you watching from. We'd love to see how far this story reaches, and don't forget to hit subscribe, because this story is just getting started. 3 stories beneath the Pentagon, where the walls were concrete, and the lights never blinked. Lieutenant Commander Scarlett Voss sat alone at the end of a long steel table. No windows, no clocks. Just that faint hum of artificial air and the weight of the United States military pressing down from above. She had waited 6 months for this meeting. 6 months since the phone call that shattered her world. 6 months since Master Chief Cole Stratton, the man who trained her, mentored her, and once dragged her bleeding through a firefight in northern Kandahar, died in what the official report called a training accident. Scarlett knew better. She stared straight ahead, her posture perfect, hands flat on the table, the kind of stillness that only came from years of sniper discipline. She didn't blink when the door opened. Admiral James Whitaker stepped inside, weathered, slow-moving, and too seasoned for ceremonial greetings. He didn't salute, neither did she. "This isn't a formality. Commander," he said, setting a manila folder down and lowering himself across from her. "You know why you're here." Scarlett's voice was calm, but not soft. Fort Ridgewater, the Combat Readiness Annex. Whitaker nodded, tight-lipped. 3 unofficial complaints in the last year, all trace back to one instructor. She didn't need the name. She'd already memorized it. Sergeant Matthew Cross, Marine Raider, Bronze Star, 2 Afghanistan deployments, decorated, respected, dangerous. Whitaker's tone dipped as he opened the folder, pulling out a black and white photograph and sliding it across the table. No formal charges, no official reprimands, but Marines keep requesting transfers, or going quiet. Scarlett looked down at the photo, mid-30s, granite jaw. That smirk you only see on men who know the system protects them. "He's got someone watching his back," she said without looking up. "And I'd bet everything I have it's not just coincidence that Master Chief Stratton was digging into this exact annex when he fell." Whitaker hesitated. Captain Elias Teague, Cross's former CO in Helmand Province, they bled together, Teague's moving up fast, and Cross is his proof of concept for what he calls aggressive combat conditioning. Scarlett's fists curled just slightly on the table. You think that makes it right? I think it makes it hard to touch. A silence hung between them. Then he slid another sheet forward. Orders. You want in? He asked. She picked up the paper. 60-day oversight rotation. Observe, report, evaluate. Everything would look above board, on paper. She'd be just another officer reviewing training procedures. But they both knew the truth. This was an infiltration. Scarlett raised her eyes. Why me? Because Cole Stratton trusted you. Whitaker said you were the best he'd ever trained. Because you've got nothing to prove, and no reason to back down. Because if this goes sideways, you won't break. Scarlett reached into her uniform and pulled out a worn metal coin the Navy SEAL trident Cole had given her after her first deployment. She set it gently on the table beside the orders. He believed in doing things right, not just hard. Right. Whitaker leaned forward. Then you understand what you're walking into. That annex isn't run by rank, it's run by dominance, on the mats, in the shadows. Cross doesn't care about protocol, he cares about control. And Teague won't let his golden boy go down without a fight. She didn't flinch. Then let them come, she said, signing her name with 3 sharp strokes. I'm not just here for answers. I'm here for justice. Whitaker stood, collected the folder, and paused at the door. Teague will know you're coming. He'll make sure Cross does too. You'll have eyes on you from the moment you step off the plane. She slipped the trident back into her shirt and stood tall. Good, Scarlett said. Let them watch. Just don't blink when they see what's coming. The plane dropped through thick clouds, revealing the sun-bleached coastline of southern Colorado. Scarlett Voss watched through the window, her reflection faint in the glass, her eyes calm but alert. She hadn't worn her uniform. No insignia, no rank, just plain clothes, a civilian duffel bag, and the kind of posture that still made strangers step aside in airport terminals. The only thing on her that screamed Navy SEAL was the way her eyes scanned exits. Constantly, subtly. Her phone buzzed as the wheels hit the runway. Unknown number, welcome to Ridgewater. Commander, looking forward to seeing what you got. See, Scarlett stared at the message. No name needed. Matthew Cross already knew she was coming. Teague had tipped him off. Good. Let them prepare whatever they needed to feel safe. She sent a single reply, Join. She's on the map. Fort Ridgewater's Combat Readiness Annex wasn't like the glossy brochures handed out to visiting brass. It was hidden, remote, cut off by chain-link fences and forgotten dirt roads, built like a bunker and run like a kingdom. Peeling paint, outdated equipment, harsh fluorescent lights that flickered overhead like they were daring you to blink first. Scarlett arrived early, 15:45 hours. She parked in a gravel lot and just sat for a few minutes, listening. Cadence chants echoed from somewhere down the range, a metallic thud of bodies hitting mats, the sharp bark of orders being followed without question. She opened her duffel, changed into her working uniform, and approached the training facility. The sign read, Combat Integration Program. Authorized personnel only. No guard, no cameras, just an open door, waiting. Inside, the air smelled of sweat and rubber. Heavy bags swung slowly. Free weights clanged. And in the center of it all, Matthew Cross. She recognized him immediately, square-jawed, broad shoulders, that same carved-from-stone face from the file photo. He turned when she entered, his eyes locking on hers. He smiled. Not wide, not warm, but confident. The smile of a man who had already decided how this was going to go. Commander Voss, he said smoothly. Heard we were getting oversight. Scarlett kept her distance 3 paces. Measured, intentional. Sergeant Cross, you'll be seeing a lot of me. Good. He glanced around at the other instructors, then back at her. We run a tight program here. Intense, high pressure, real-world preparation. Not exactly textbook. I'm not here to grade your textbooks, she said. Just your judgment. Something flickered in his expression just for a second. Fair enough, he said, then gestured to a younger instructor beside him. Corporal Reyes will get you set up in admin. You need anything, you ask. We're all about support. Scarlett gave him a small nod and turned to follow Reyes. But she felt it, the weight of Cross's gaze on her back, like a sniper lining up a shot. Calculating, patient. Inside the admin office, Reyes handed her a login sheet. He was young, maybe 25. Nervous, like someone with too much to say and no idea who was safe. Scarlett broke the silence. You were here when Stratton died. Reyes stiffened. Yes, ma'am. She watched him carefully. Did you see anything? A long pause, then quietly he spoke. I saw Cross on the tower an hour before it happened. Saw him checking ropes, said it was routine, but I filed a report. 2 days later, it was gone. My name wasn't on anything anymore. Teague, she asked. Reyes nodded. Came to my quarters himself. Told me I was mistaken. Said pushing the story would make me look unstable, like I couldn't handle pressure. Scarlett sat still. Her throat felt tight, not with fear, but with something colder. Rage wrapped in discipline. Would you say that on the record? He hesitated. I'll protect you, she said. But I need the truth. Reyes looked down, then back at her, straightening his spine. Yeah, I will. She handed him her card. Good. Because Cross isn't just a bad instructor. He's a storm coming, and you just gave me my first lightning bolt. The sun dipped low over the mountains by the time Scarlett returned to the training hall. The building was half lit now, the air inside thicker, quieter, like it was holding its breath. She had spent the last hour digging through digital logs, training sessions, incident reports, injury write-ups that had been quietly marked as routine, and yet patterns were forming. Patterns Master Chief Cole Stratton had already started to uncover before his death. She could feel it. When she stepped into the main gym, the smell of sweat and chalk hit her like a memory. Matthew Cross stood at the center of the mat, barking instructions while a group of recruits locked one another in submission holds. Controlled violence, tense, measured chaos. Scarlett moved to the edge, clipboard in hand, silent but unmistakably present. Cross noticed immediately. Commander Voss, he said, with a smirk that didn't belong on a man who was training warriors. Welcome to the show. Tonight's lesson pressure makes diamonds. Scarlett didn't respond. She simply watched. One by one, the recruits stepped onto the mat, paired up for what Cross called combat stress inoculation. In theory, it was simple simulate oxygen deprivation to build mental resilience. But in execution, it was something darker. She watched as a young corporal was placed in a triangle choke, tapped out quickly, and still the hold lingered. 3 extra seconds. Scarlett scribbled a note, and then another, and another. From a distance, Cross looked like a model instructor. His voice calm, movements sharp. Everything textbook. But it was too clean, too rehearsed. The kind of perfection that only showed up when someone knew they were being watched. He was performing. He was lying. When the final round ended, the room buzzed with exhaustion, bodies slumped against walls, gasping. Cross approached, wiping sweat from his neck. Well, he asked. Scarlett flipped her notes closed. Technique was clean, she said flatly. But the duration on some holds flirted with regulation limits. Flirting isn't crossing, he replied smoothly. Not yet, she said. But I didn't come here to flirt with violations. Their eyes locked. 2 professionals, 2 predators. One war still being fought with words. You know, Cross said, voice lowering, Stratton used to watch us train. He believed in pushing limits, too. Scarlett's jaw clenched. Cole Stratton believed in making warriors better, not breaking them for sport. There's a difference. Cross tilted his head. Just slightly. You sure about that, Commander? Or are you just chasing ghosts? Scarlett didn't blink. Some ghosts are worth chasing, especially when they didn't get the justice they deserved. A silence stretched between them. Then Cross gave a slow, practiced smile. Well, then, he said, maybe you should come see our voluntary session tomorrow night. Off the schedule, off the record. Real scenarios. Real results. She didn't hesitate. I'll be there. Later that night. Scarlett sat in her car in the empty lot, the engine off. Darkness pressing in like a weight. The bruise from earlier barely visible on a recruit's neck flashed again in her mind. She could hear Cole Stratton's voice like a memory worn smooth. Preparation saves lives. That's not poetry. That's survival. She pulled out her phone and texted Reyes. Was that session tonight typical? His reply came quickly. Not even close. That was the cleaned-up version. Scarlett closed her eyes. So this was how it worked. Cross gave the illusion of compliance during the day. But at night, off the books, that's where the truth lived, in the shadows. And tomorrow, she'd walk straight into those shadows. Not as an observer, not as oversight, as bait. Because if Matthew Cross wanted to send a message she was ready to answer, the next night came wrapped in silence. By 1845, Scarlett Voss was already parked in the far corner of the annex lot, her vehicle in shadow, inside the gym. The lights were low, but glowing. Unofficial. That's what Cross had said. No cameras, no oversight, just real training. She changed into her Navy PT gear black shorts, gray shirt, hands wrapped tight like she was going into a fight. And in a way, she was. But this wasn't about fists. This was about evidence. She checked her phone. A single text from Reyes auxiliary cams active. You'll be covered. She slid the phone away and stepped out into the night. Every movement calm, every breath measured. Inside the facility, maybe 15 people were already gathered, most of them instructors or high-performing recruits. No uniforms, no rank insignias, just sweat, muscle, and that buzz in the air that always preceded violence. Matthew Cross stood at the center, hands on his hips, that ever-present smirk tugging at one corner of his mouth like it was carved there. Commander Voss, he said. Didn't expect you to show. You said voluntary, she replied. I volunteered. There were a few chuckles around the room, tight and nervous. He nodded slowly. Glad to have you. We're doing high-intensity scenarios tonight. Things get loud, a little messy. You sure you're ready for that? She stepped onto the mat, stretching like this was just another Tuesday workout. I've seen messy. I've bled on mats in 3 countries. I'll be fine. Cross's eyes sparkled. He wanted this. She could feel it. He wanted to show her who ruled this place. He didn't just want to beat her. He wanted to send a message. Then let's begin, he said. The session was brutal. Controlled sparring turned into chaos within minutes. No protective gear, no instructors calling time, just hold after hold, choke after choke, grunts and coughs and taps that went unanswered for too long. Scarlett stood still on the edge of the mat, watching, memorizing. The holds were precise, too precise. Cross knew anatomy. He knew exactly how long he could keep a recruit inside a triangle or guillotine without leaving bruises that would raise questions. He skirted the line, flirted with danger, but always stopped just short of proof. Until he didn't. She saw it in the final round. A recruit, maybe 21, slammed into the mat by a much larger opponent, caught in a rear naked choke. He tapped once, twice, then started flailing. Cross didn't move. Scarlett stepped forward. "Release!" she barked, her voice slicing through the gym like a blade. Everything stopped. The hold released. The recruit rolled over, coughing, face red, tears in his eyes. Cross looked at her, unfazed. "We train for the battlefield, not a yoga studio." Scarlett stared at him. "And on the battlefield. That kid would be dead." There was a beat. No one spoke. Then Cross said, "Maybe it's time you stepped in. Commander, you've been observing for days. Maybe show the recruits what your technique looks like." The trap was finally set. Scarlett nodded once. Happy to. They faced off. No referee, no warm-up, just them in front of a silent circle of watching eyes. "Standard rules," she asked. "Submission only," Cross replied. "Tap to end." She looked him in the eye. "You follow them." He smiled, always. They circled, tension thick in the air. The others watched, breathless. He struck first, sharp, low, testing her movement. She dodged, countered, grappling, shifting, weight against weight. It looked like a demonstration. But then he went for it, the same choke he'd used on the recruit, the same one he'd used on Stratton, probably. Arms tight, pressure increasing. Scarlett tapped. Once, twice. He didn't release. 4 seconds. 5. 6. Her vision blurred. Her lungs screamed. Someone shouted from the edge of the mat. 8. 9. 10. Finally, he let go. Scarlett collapsed, coughing, every breath razor-edged. Cross leaned down. "Sorry, Commander," he said, smooth as glass. "Guess I held a little too long." She didn't speak, didn't blink. She just looked at him, not with fear, with precision, the kind that comes before a sniper pulls the trigger. And he had no idea. The shot had already been fired. The locker room was cold, silent. Just 4 concrete walls and a cheap mirror above a stained sink. Scarlett Voss stood there alone, her hands braced against the edge of the counter, steam rising off her skin. The outline of Matthew Cross's choke was already blooming across her throat, a perfect print, like some predator had tried to sign his name into her flesh. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She just stared at her reflection, at the bruises, the blood vessels broken just beneath the surface, at the fire in her own eyes. Not rage, not anymore. Clarity, because now there was no more doubt, no more shadows. He had done it, again. And this time, she was ready. Scarlett pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and opened the encrypted camera app. She turned toward the mirror and snapped 3 photos angles. Timestamp, evidence, every detail documented. Then she texted one word to Reyes happened. The response came instantly. "Footage clear. Audio 2. He held for 10.7 seconds. We've got him." She slumped onto the bench, hands shaking. Not from fear. Not from the aftershock of being choked in front of a room full of recruits. But because she knew. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of the reckoning. 20 minutes later, in a maintenance room hidden behind the equipment storage shed, Scarlett met with Command Master Chief Dalton Reeves, retired SEAL, quiet observer, and one of the only people left who believed in what Cole Stratton had died trying to expose. Reeves took one look at her throat, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "When?" 23 minutes ago, she rasped. "Voluntary session. No official oversight. No cameras, unless yours were running." Reeves nodded. He didn't need to say yes. He was already booting up his encrypted laptop, pulling up feeds from Stratton's old auxiliary sensor grid cameras hidden in rafters, rigged into beams, blind spots the official system conveniently ignored. There it was, Scarlett and Cross, circling, grappling, the choke, her taps, the stillness of his hands while she flailed. 10.7 seconds. Reeves cursed under his breath. We've got him. Scarlett shook her head. Not yet. He'll say it was heat of the moment, that he didn't feel the tap, that I was defending aggressively. We need a pattern. We need to show this wasn't a mistake. It's who he is. Reeves stared at her. You want to set a formal demonstration? Yes, she said. This time, with full oversight, JAG presence, official observers, I'll request it. Put myself in again. Let him think I'm coming for redemption. Let him try it again. And if he doesn't, Scarlett looked him dead in the eyes. Then we play what we already have. I testify, Reyes testifies. We stack Stratton's reports, your footage, the bruises on my neck, and let the system deal with the shame. Reeves nodded slowly. You know, Stratton said you were like him, that you didn't just follow orders, you made them mean something. Scarlett smiled. A bitter thing. He died trying to clean this place. I'm just following through on the mess they left behind. She pulled out her notepad and began writing the formal request. Request combat readiness demonstration. Lead Sergeant Matthew Cross. Objective evaluation of tap-out protocols under simulated resistance. She paused, then added, Observers requested JAG officer, base commander, training admin. Reeves watched her work, then reached into his coat pocket and slid something across the table. A badge, a weathered, gold-plated insignia. Stratton's original SEAL trident. Scarlett froze. I thought this was buried with him. Reeves shook his head. He left it with me, told me to give it to you, if you ever proved you were ready. She picked it up. It was heavier than metal had any right to be. I'm not ready, she whispered. Reeves smiled. That's how I know you are. Friday, 1600 hours. The gym looked nothing like the place where Scarlett Voss had nearly passed out on the mat just 3 nights before. Tonight, everything was different. Chairs lined the perimeter, a row of observers in full-dress uniform, a Navy JAG officer, the base commander, a handful of high-ranking brass who rarely showed their faces unless things were about to get loud. Cameras were rolling from every angle, official equipment, time-stamped, archived, permanent. Scarlett stood at the edge of the mat, calm, composed, her bruises mostly faded but still visible if you looked close enough. She wore her service khakis, her decorations neat and precise, and on her collar gleamed 2 tridents, her own, and Cole Stratton's, pinned beside it like a silent witness. Across the mat stood Sergeant Matthew Cross. He wore confidence like armor, but his smile a little too tight, his stance a little too stiff. He knew, on some level. He knew. Base Commander Riley called the room to order. Today's evaluation has been requested by Commander Voss. Purpose to assess adherence to tap-out protocols under pressure scenarios. All actions will be recorded for official review. He nodded toward Scarlett. Commander, your demonstration begins. Scarlett didn't move. Not yet. I'd like Sergeant Cross to demonstrate on me. Full-speed engagement, realistic resistance, as close to combat as possible. Murmurs spread across the room. Even Cross tilted his head. You sure about that, Commander? Her voice was like steel. Are you... He nodded once. Let's dance. They squared off on the mat. The world faded. Just the beat of Scarlett's heart, the weight of Stratton's trident on her collar, and the breath of every recruit in the room held tight in their chest. They engaged. Cross came in fast, too fast. He was trying to control the narrative to make it look real but safe. Measured, in regulation. Scarlett gave him room. Let him take position. Let him think he was in control. Then came the choke. His arms slid under her chin, his weight pressed forward, her vision dimmed, her pulse pounded. She tapped once, she tapped twice. He held. 2 seconds, 4, 6. The room was no longer silent. Someone shouted. The JAG officer stood. 7, 8, 9. Then finally release. Scarlett collapsed to one knee, gasping, throat aching. Cross stepped back, arms raised like a man innocent of all things. My apologies, he said, voice calm. She resisted longer than expected. The signal got lost in the moment. He turned toward the command table. But this time, no one was looking at him. They were all staring at the monitors. Because on the wall behind him, the footage was already playing multiple angles, courtesy of the auxiliary system Stratton had built. Infrared overlays, timestamps, Scarlett's tap, his delay. The same pattern repeated on 3 separate recruits. Same move, same choke, same refusal to release. A timeline of abuse dressed up as training? The room exploded. JAG officers moved. The commander gave orders. Observers stood. And Cross. He froze for the first time. Truly frozen. Because no smirk, no excuse, no connection to Teague could fight what was now documented and undeniable. Scarlett stood tall. Her voice, though hoarse, was clear. You taught them to ignore limits, she said, loud enough for every recruit to hear. But I'm here to remind them discipline isn't weakness. It's what keeps us alive. Base Commander Riley turned to the JAG officer. Effective immediately. Sergeant Cross is relieved of duty and placed under formal investigation. Cross didn't say a word as he was escorted from the room. He didn't have to. His silence said it all. Scarlett Voss didn't win with fists. She didn't bring justice with rage. She brought it with proof, with patience, and with the kind of discipline that can only be forged through pain. She walked into a place where power was abused, where silence had been the currency of survival. And she didn't shout. She didn't swing. She stood. And in standing, she reminded every recruit in that room and every leader watching that strength isn't how long you can hold the choke. It's knowing when to let go. Matthew Cross thought he could break her, that no one would believe her, that the system would protect him. But systems are only as strong as the people willing to hold them accountable. And Scarlett was that person. The kind of warrior who didn't fight to hurt, but to heal something that had been broken long before she arrived. The system didn't make her strong. She made the system better. If this story spoke to you, hit subscribe and tap the bell. There's more where this came from. Share it with someone who needs a reminder. Calm courage can change everything. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.